we get into details, let me introduce some of the basic terms we like to use in design research. And it's important to know these terms because sometimes there's many words to describe the same things in design and design thinking. So let's actually start with the term design research. So we agreed that this would be the right term to use for any type of user research, end user research, empathy research, or needs finding. So those are other words you might hear out there. So don't get spooked by the vocabulary, use whatever is comfortable. In this course, we will use design research. Another important term to understand is observation. It sounds easy, but for example, in this case, we're looking at an end user and she actually has in front of her an iPad. So that might provoke a question. What is she using the iPad for? And maybe we can ask her to show us what she's doing on the iPad and what works for her and what doesn't. So observation is a very essential part of our field research. Context. So context is also another important piece when you go and see your end users. What is their working context? Are they in a car? Or like in this example, in a manufacturing floor, looking at this huge industrial machine. And that might, in my mind, then provoke some questions. What is this machine? What are they doing about? How does that actually influence them as far as their work goes and the tasks they're performing? Tools. So tools is another thing I like to pay attention to when I do my field visits or my design research. So I always ask users to show me what they're using. So for example, in this particular photo, you will see that the user has a PowerPoint of sorts and some printouts in front of her, and is also using pens and paper and erasers and a notepad and markers. So I would ask questions about what are these tools for and what is the user doing with them. Diversity. So that's something you want to answer fairly early on in your design research. What is the target audience for your application? Who is the customer? And then I would explore that. So if you have a very diverse group in mind, obviously you need to do field research for a diverse group of people. If you're just shipping to the American market, that might be a different story than shipping globally. Artifacts. So artifacts are things I like to ask for when I go on a field visit. Those are things you might bring home to your project team to show them what the user actually used. So for example, in this particular case, the artifact is this report this user showed us. And sometimes they let us take those reports and or printouts or other artifacts home. And it's very powerful to have those for later reference. Next, let's talk about the key roles in design research. The first one I want to point out is there's a big difference between what we call the customer and the end user. So sometimes the customer is actually not the end user. The customer is typically who pays for the application. So these could be people like the CFO or the head of sales, but the end user might actually be the salesperson or the accountant. Sometimes the customer is also the end user. So that's something you want to clarify very early on because it is important to understand both needs. Another role, and you will see Lucas throughout the course, is the role of a design researcher. So this is a person who was actually trained how to ask all these good questions and how to practice good observation and testing techniques. We will also talk about the importance of a moderator. So when you go out on your field visit, it is important that you have somebody who runs the interview or manages the conversation, and another person we'll get to in a second. But the moderator basically asks the question and moderates the field visit. The note taker is another very important role to bring along on a site visit or field visit. Basically, that's the person that takes notes of everything. What the user says, the environment they're working on, any artifacts, potentially they even sketch things, tools the user uses, etc. So they're an important sidekick for the moderator to make sure everything during the site visit is captured. So other important roles that you should have coming along with you on your design research, if possible, are designers, developers, and product managers. Why is that important? Well, they all bring a very unique perspective to your product and to the later software design and development effort. And they will all take very different things away from your field research. So if possible, bring them along and have them listen to the interviews, read through your notes, and or understand everything they can about the customer and end user so they can do their craft later on in the software development project. So thank you for joining us in this first week. I hope we gave you a little bit of an overview of some of the basic terms. Don't worry, we will go over them again. And thank you for coming with us through week 1. In week 2, we will talk about planning your design research, so what you need to do to get ready. And we hope to see you next week.